Hello, everyone. I'm Gabe Haines, a student at Bloomsburg University. I'm coming to you with a new video, and this video is titled Policy Briefing. Now, this policy briefing is the second policy briefing that I've done. I've done a policy briefing before on China's disregard for human rights, but this one is a little bit different. Today, we are looking at AI and US-China relations. So let's get started. First of all, I'm going to give you an overview of the policy briefing. So I'll run down what we're covering, so you can follow along easier. So number one, we'll be looking at the background of AI technology and the advancements. Number two, we'll look at China's response, the diplomatic approach. Number three, the economical approach. Number four, the military approach. And number five, the conclusion. So, here a little bit of background of AI technology. John McCarthy was the co-founder of AI that happened in 1951. Since then, it has improved education, healthcare, and transportation. Scientists over the years have evolved AI, and they have taught it more features and more ways to complete certain tasks that we uh, come up with in our daily lives. Since the early 1980s, specifically in 1984, computers were created, and then in the early 2000s, smartphones were created, and they have both enhanced society. In the 21st century, we have become more dependent upon AI in society all around the world to do simple tasks, such as write an essay for us, help us study better, and um, really be able to complete tasks that seem difficult in some ways. And now we come to the last part, which is that tensions are brewing between the United States and China. The U.S. has increased protections on hacking and security breaching, specifically after the Chinese spy balloon incident earlier this year. So now let's look at the next one. So, the current status of U.S.-China relations. Where are we now? So, what has happened? So, as of 2023, new actions have been carried out by the U.S. to deteriorate Chinese security breaches and hacking. For example, on October 30th, earlier this year, U.S. President Joe Biden signed an executive order on AI safety and security. He did that to, say that the United States is sticking with AI, but they would like to toughen it up a bit so that so it won't be as prone to hacking by Chinese officials or any other country for that matter, and ensure that the workers in the factories and the companies are able to work with cooperation without any interference from a foreign nation. And on November 16th, just earlier this week, or it might have been last week, U.S. President Joe Biden met with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in San Francisco. And of course, they had a good summit there. Now, let's look at the next one. China's diplomatic approaches. No, they have met at APEC in 2023, and we get to the next of the diplomatic approaches themselves. So China should not intervene with U.S. companies and respect citizens' right to privacy. That has been something that has been not touched on has been touched on in recent years, and China should look into that more seriously. China needs to develop more secured versions of apps created within the country, such as TikTok. Um, TikTok has been a controversial app in the eyes of the United States, but has not been a controversial app in China's eyes. The Chinese president should say that creativity is important and should be accepted by the Chinese government to encourage civil interaction. So they should say that creativity is good as it helps to develop future policy making and encourages different steps to ease the tensions of the U.S. and China's relationship. And both countries need to remain civil if any progression is made and accept the outcomes of competition. So now we get to China's economic approach. No, the U.S. is becoming more reliant upon AI for daily tasks and projects. Factories and major companies are replacing more workers with robots. The Chinese president needs to address that AI is welcome to any country as long as it's used for economic growth. New restrictions to prohibit spyware hacking are essential, and better economic trajectories for each country's negotiating partners should be updated. If the U.S. promotes false or misleading statements, the CCP should cut funding for some of the companies in the United States are heavily dependent upon, such as Apple or Google, i.e., cut funding for the iPhone or any other Apple product. Lastly, we get to China's military approaches. Note China's military stationed in the South China Sea, and they've been there for quite some time. The president should state that nuclear war is to be avoided at all costs. It should say that the United States should not be a policeman of Southeast Asia, but only get involved if it is absolutely necessary. And if need be, the CCP will deploy drones to combat U.S. interference in the South China Sea. And they should avoid falsehoods or other misinformation that could create division amongst U.S. citizens. And lastly, we get to the conclusion. So, China should become more open to the competition between the U.S. Both countries need to work in bipartisan ways to meet the needs of both countries' population, and China needs to work with AI tech to help influence decision making in economic, militaristic, and diplomatic affairs. Those are the basic components to running a country. And China should keep the U.S. close, since it's one of its largest trading companies out there. So that is the Chinese policy briefing on AI and U.S. and China relationship. I hope you all enjoyed this little policy briefing, and have a good evening, all.